Hi, I'm Missy with On William Street. We are now on month 2 of our online Quilting Bee Skill Builder Quilt Along. It's a mouthful, I know, but we are hoping that we can help share with you some good skills, help build your skills together, and we're so excited to be able to work with you together this year. So month 2, we are doing our log cabin block. So log cabin is a block that's going to build upon each other, and this is going to end up being an 18-inch block with 4 mini log cabins sewn together inside that block. So the first thing we need to do is get all of our fabric strips cut, and we do have all of the requirements, all the sizes and everything in the blog post, so you don't need to remember what I'm saying. Just keep in mind that they are there, so you don't have to remember. So what we have is our white and our yellow squares. So these are 2.5-inch squares. We've got these post-it notes just to help keep things organized. Makes it a little easier for us. So that's going to be 4 of each. And then we also have 2.5 by 4.5-inch strips. So again, we've got our white and our light green and 4 of each of those. And then we have our light green 2.5 by 6.5-inch strips. So there's going to be 4 of those light green pieces. And then we're going to start getting into slightly thinner pieces as we go out to the outer edges of our block. So these white strips are going to be 2 inches instead of 2.5. So it's still going to be that 6.5-inch lengthwise strip. And then we have, for this one, you're going to see we've got our white, our green, and our gray. So the reason we've got the green and the gray is 2 of our blocks are going to be slightly different from each other. They're going to end with gray, and 2 are going to end with green. So we've got these, again, our 2-inch strips, so 2 by 8.5. And then our final strips, we've got our 2 green and our 2 gray. There are 2 by 8. Oh, sorry, 2 by 8 inches, not 2 by 8.5. That's why I said all the sizes are in the blog post, so you don't have to remember. And in case I say it wrong, go to the blog post. And then these ones are 2 inches by 9.5 inches, and these will be our final strips.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to sew a 2.5-inch white square to our 2.5-inch yellow square. So just go ahead and lay those on top of each other. And just go ahead and put a 1/4-inch seam down one side. This one doesn't really matter which side, since how they are both square. After you've finished sewing that, you are going to want to go ahead and press that to one side before we sew the next piece on. We are now ready to add the next piece. And with the log cabin, you're going to notice that it really starts to build around the center piece. All the pieces are going to be built around the first initial 2 sections that we sewed together and work its way out from there. So go ahead and take your 2.5 by 4.5-inch white piece and place it on one side of the block. Make sure with this one that your yellow is pointed towards you. You want this to be so that the white square is on the top and the yellow square is on the bottom when you sew these together, so that you make sure that everything is sewn on the right side of the block. Now after this one, we don't need to worry about ironing it quite yet. We can go ahead and add on the green piece onto the opposite side without, and then iron both of them at the end after we've sewn that on. So this is going to be, again, that 2.5 by 4.5-inch green piece going on the opposite side of those 2 initial squares. When you're doing this, just make sure that you have that seam underneath is laying in the right direction so that you don't flip it as you sew over the top of it. Now we're ready to add our next light green piece, and this is going to be a 2.5 by 6.5-inch square. And when you're lining it up, make sure that you're lining it up next to the yellow square so that it is touching that yellow square in the middle. And then go ahead and sew that with your 1/4-inch seam. Again, just kind of make sure that you watch the seams underneath to make sure that you're not folding those over and they're staying the direction that you pressed them. Before we press this piece, we're going to be able to go ahead and add on our next white piece on the bottom to this as well, and then we'll press both of them. When sewing on this next strip, you said just make sure that the greens are all going to be touching the yellow section in the middle, and then the whites will all be touching white on the opposite side, and that will keep everything where it's supposed to be. So this is your 6.5 by 2 inch white strip that we're going to sew on here. So it is a little bit skinnier now. And again, just go ahead and use that same 1/4 inch seam and sew that on opposite to the light green strip that we just sewed. When you're putting these together, if you just make sure that all of these few center blocks go on right after that, it should be easy to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be so that we get the right colors in the right places. Right, now you'll want to go ahead and iron both of these seams open, and then we're ready to add the next.
As you see, we're starting to build around that. We're going to add our next white piece, and again, this one is the thinner one, so this is the 2 inch by 8 inch strip. Okay, and then this is where you're going to notice that the two blocks differ a little bit from each other. So one is going to have the dark green and one is going to have the gray. So on this one, we're going to go ahead and do the dark green. So we take our 2 by 8 inch strip of dark green, and remember, we want to make sure that our dark green are lining up with our light green, just like we did our light green with our yellow. Now we've got one final seam, the last piece of our dark green. This is the 2 by 9.5 inch strip. We're going to sew it on this other side, and then the first portion of our block is complete. Okay, so our first section is complete. We'll press this and then we will make a second block following this exact same layout with the same fabric colors. So now we've got our center all sewn together for the variation. So this one is going to have the gray. So as we come in, we're going to sew the white on this side, so matching up with those white pieces. So this is the 2 by 8 inch strip, and then we're going to sew the 2 by 8 inch gray strip over here next to the light green. So let's go ahead and start with the gray strip. Okay, and then we'll come around and we're going to sew the white strip on the other side. Okay, so we're going to iron those seams and then we're going to sew our last gray piece. So this is going to be the 2 by 9.5 inch piece on this side, and that will finish up our log cabins. Now that we've got all 4 of our log cabin blocks complete, we've sewn them together, and you want to make sure that as you're sewing them together, you want to alternate the green and the gray so that they are diagonal from each other. And then also, you'll notice our nice little point right here in the center. A good way to get that point, to make sure everything is lined up perfectly, is one, to nest the seams. So when you're ironing, you're going to want to iron this. We ironed both of them towards the green. So iron this one towards the green and this one towards the green, and then when you're putting those seams together, they can nest right next to each other, which is going to help you with your sewing. And then also use a couple of pins. Pins are my friend when it comes to quilting, because I do like to have those seams line up just nicely. Just throw a quick little pin in on the side. You can throw one on both sides if you would like to make sure that you get that nice and accurate. So your block is complete. This is month number 2, our log cabin, and we've got 4 smaller log cabins all sewn together, so we've got lots of really good practice on your log cabin quilt for you. And make sure, if you're following along with us, sewing with us, use the hashtag OnlineQuiltingBee2020 so that we can see what you're doing and everybody else can see what you're working on as we're all sewing together throughout the year. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook so you can see everything that we're working on, and to get reminders every month of the block that we're working on that month and links to the video, you can sign up on our newsletter list, and you'll also, as a bonus, get access to our subscriber library with lots of really fun goodies, and we're continually adding to that. So we'll see you next week.